Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Claude White, and what I am about to do is I am going to bury, figuratively, not literally, Mr. George Herbert Walker Bush. As you know, he is currently being laid to rest right now in Washington. And as far as I'm concerned, he passed away a good 30 plus years too late for our people. And as far as I'm concerned, may he rest eternally in hell. I am very, very disgusted that this man didn't pass away back in the 80s, but hey, nevertheless, it was his time to take his dirt nap now, and now he can lay to rest next to his Quaker Oats-looking bitch of a wife, Barbara Bush. And in fact, I am going to pour myself a little drink to wish him a speedy going on to his eternal resting place in the depths of hell next to Ronald 666 Reagan, J. Edgar Hoover, and the rest of his cronies. I shall be right back. Give me a couple minutes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am back, and it is time to properly send off that rat bastard that they call George W. Herbert Walker Bush Sr. And yes, I will be sending him off with a bottle of fine vodka. Notice I do not get any mediocre stuff. And this is a toast, a going away toast for one George Herbert Walker Bush. Yes, he was such a terrible human being. He is the clown that he, along with Ronald Reagan and his fellow Republicans, put plenty of crack cocaine and illicit drugs in our communities. Of course, remember, there was no such thing as AIDS at the beginning of the Reagan presidency. At least he refused to acknowledge the AIDS epidemic in the early to mid 80s until his friend Rock Hudson contracted and later passed away from that vile and deadly disease. And he tried to blame it on Africa, the rhesus monkey, the Haitian refugees. He blamed everybody but the illicit and disgusting immoral behavior of many of his own fellow actors and actresses of his time. And of course, George W. Bush went to further along Reagan's theories and things of that ilk. And he did start the war in Desert Storm, which I am a veteran of. In fact, I received a call on Thanksgiving of 1990 to go to Kuwait and be part of Operation Desert Storm. He sent the economy straight to hell. He was a very disgusting individual. And listen, before you say that I'm just piling on the Republicans and people like 666 Ronald Reagan, and I do have absolutely no love for that sorry bastard. He's another one who died 30 years too late when it came to our people. I have no love for these so-called liberals like William Jefferson Clinton, Mr. Three Strikes, or Hillary, Miss Super Predator. As far as I'm concerned, whether it's the left wing or the right wing, is the same foul and ugly bird. But we are putting one of its shameful leaders to rest today. And to you, George Herbert Walker Bush Sr., may you forever rest in hell. I would pour out a little, but you know what? You're not worth it. And this Ciroc, quite frankly, costs too fucking much. So fuck you, President George Herbert Walker Bush. May you forever rest in hell. Delicious. Another drink to you, you rat bastard. And may you never be forgotten, but you will be remembered for being the scumbag and rat bastard and disgrace that you are. And may our people continually and forever rise above the likes of people like you. And now I will go on with the rest of my live stream, and I will no longer bring up that sorry bastard's name. Now, the rest of the live stream, I'm going to deal with the NFL, and I'm going to deal with coaches that I believe are on the hot seat at the end of this season. Now, there are only 4 games left in the regular season. And depending on how these 4 games go, there are going to be, at least to me, 7 to 8 coaches that could lose their jobs at the end of the season of 2018. Now, there are a couple of coaches, no matter what happens, they're already out the door. Now, I'm not talking about places like Cleveland and Green Bay, which already have interim coaches. We already know that those particular teams are going to make a coaching change. Now, for you people out there that are watching the live stream or will participate in the live stream, please let me know what other coaches that you feel could be part of this particular list that I have made up. Now, as I mentioned before, I am not counting teams like the Cleveland Browns, who already have an interim coach in Greg Williams. And in fact, they've already, if I'm not mistaken, they've already interviewed Condoleezza Rice, the ex-Secretary of State, under George W. Bush. Yeah, he's probably wailing and bailing over his daddy. Fuck him too. I tell you what, before this clown, the orange-faced bastard, I would never put his name in any of my live streams. That orange-faced bastard. Before the orange-faced bastard, I thought George W. Bush was the biggest laughingstock that this country has ever seen at the presidency. But this man has trumped him. Well, excuse the pun, he has trumped him. But I digress. Let me start with my number 1 coach that should be headed to the chopping block. And he is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach, Dirk Cutter. Now, when you think of the fact that Lovie Smith was let go after a 2-game plus where his team actually got better compared to the year prior, Dirk Cutter has been given plenty of rope. And as you can see, Jameis Winston has regressed to the point where he was benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick twice, okay? Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick became Ryan Fitzpatrick again, and that is why Jameis Winston is back at the quarterback position here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But let's face it, Tampa Bay is at the crossroads now. I mean, it is a known fact that you cannot trust Jameis Winston. But you have to have a better backup than Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick, as we know, can go hot and cold all in the same game. Now, he did have one good year with the Jets, but again, that was an anomaly. And also, when you add to the fact that the Tampa Bay defense is among the worst in the NFL, I mean, Dirk Cutter has been an absolute disgrace as coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he deserves to walk the plank. He has not had a winning season as a head coach. In fact, I shall be right back, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to update a couple of things, because what I'm also going to do is give you the one-loss records of all of these coaches that I feel will walk the plank. Please hold on, sit tight for a couple of minutes. I shall return. What happened, kid? Now, are you serious? I'm doing it now. You got it. Oh, come on, come get here. Hey, God damn it. Messing up my fucking foot. That's fine. I can't use it now. It takes too long. I'm losing. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. What I am going to do, I'll probably come back to it, but I will continue on. As I mentioned, the first coach that I feel should walk the plank is Dirk Cutter. Now, the second coach that I feel should walk the plank is the Cincinnati Bengal head coach. And as you can tell, that's no surprise. It is Mr. Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis has been the most tenured head coach in the NFL, and he still is looking for his very first playoff victory. There is no excuse as to why this man wasn't fired 4 or 5 years ago. Then when you heap on top of that the Bengals haven't made the playoffs over the past 3 years, it's very easy to see that Marvin Lewis should definitely walked the plank, so to speak, when it comes to his job tenure. There is no way Marvin Lewis should have survived as long as he had. Now, I don't want to hear, well, he's had a lot of injuries. Look, A.J. Green been out for over half the season. Listen, when he had A.J. Green, they didn't win shit. Andy Dalton, as you see, has never materialized as a quote-unquote franchise quarterback. I mean, Dalton's hurt right now. Jeff Driscoll will probably lead them for the rest of the season. I wouldn't bring Andy Dalton back, I'll tell you that. Now, the sad part of that is this is probably the worst quarterbacks draft class in the last 4 to 5 seasons. I mean, I don't see a franchise quarterback coming out of this draft. You're going to have to wait for the Alabama kid, and he's coming off a gruesome leg injury. We already know what happened to the UCF quarterback. I mean, let's face it, there are not many real draft-worthy quarterbacks in the 2018 draft. There just isn't. Excuse me, the 2019 draft class. So, as far as I'm concerned, Marvin Lewis should definitely walk the plank. And also, the defense, which is supposed to be Marvin Lewis's calling card, has regressed to a point where they're no longer even a viable option on that. They are amongst the bottom when it comes to third down efficiency on defense, when it comes to rushing the quarterback. Their secondary is hideous. I mean, let's face it. The Cincinnati Bengals have underachieved for so long that I believe even Mike Brown, the owner and general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals, even he's fed up. And he's seen enough of Marvin Lewis. So it is time for him to walk the plank. He is the second guy on my list. Now, the third guy on my list, and I hate to say it, and he really doesn't deserve this fate, but I understand it because, let's face it, this team has obviously quit on this man. He is the New York Jets head coach, Todd Bowles. Now, Todd Bowles came in like a house on fire. He had the aforementioned Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he finished 10-6. Now, they did not make the playoffs that season because of a very tough loss to the Buffalo Bills. In fact, I remember that season very vividly because the Steelers were able to come in through the back door and make the playoffs. And they actually had a good run, that Pittsburgh Steelers team. They did lose to the New England Patriots at home in the playoffs, but they played – no, in fact, I was wrong on that. They beat the Bengals in the playoffs, but lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the Denver Broncos, that season. And if you remember, Le'Veon Bell was hurt, and Antonio Brown was knocked out of the game thanks to a cheap shot by one Vontaze Burfict. But that was the only winning season in Todd Bowles' tenure as the head coach of the New York Jets. Now, he did better than a lot of people thought he was going to do last season. Remember, he had, of all people, Josh McCown as quarterback of the Jets. Josh McCown is the quarterback right now, and that's only because Sam Darnold has been hurt over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Now, Sam Darnold, I mean, let's face it, he has done what most rookie quarterbacks have done. They have flashes of brilliance, but for the most part, they are very inconsistent, and their touchdown to interception ratios are not the best. And we knew this was going to be the fact when Sam Darnold became the starting quarterback of the New York Jets. But the sad part to that is the New York Jets defense has underachieved, and they have shown signs of quitting on Todd Bowles. I mean, if you saw the game against New England, against Minnesota, they really quit on the man. I don't think you can bring Todd Bowles back if you are the Jet hierarchy. You just can't do it. And it's sad because as far as I'm concerned, he really has earned the right to see this thing turn around because a lot of this is not his fault. I mean, again, you have to start over with a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold, who has shown flashes. I mean, their receiving core is actually pretty decent. When you have a Robbie Anderson and a Quincy Enunwa, they could use help at the tight end position. Their offensive line is not that great, especially when you consider losing Nick Mangold a couple of years ago. He retired pretty early. I mean, a lot of people would have thought that he would have lasted a little longer, but the injuries caught up to the man, and they do not have any studs on the offensive or defense. Now, the defensive line is decent when you have a Leonard Williams, but they do not pressure the quarterback enough. Their linebacking core is actually pretty decent. Their secondary is mediocre at best, but they do have a rising star in Jamal Adams. He is one of the premier safeties in the National Football League. But I do believe that Todd Bowles will walk the plank at the end of 2018. Now, the fourth guy I have on this list is pretty interesting. And I know a lot of people might disagree with this. But when you start out 6-2, and now your record is 6-6, let's face it. If you're the Carolina Panthers head coach, Ron Rivera, you do deserve to be on this list. Ron Rivera made it to the Super Bowl about 3-4 years ago. They were not able to finish the deal because, let's face it, that Denver Broncos defense was definitely one of the top defenses of all time, and they wrecked Cam Newton to death. They had Cam running for his life. Cam Newton did not show the presence of mind that I thought an MVP caliber quarterback would have. And Cam Newton, up until I would say about 3 weeks ago, and I do believe Cam is playing hurt, and there are reports that Cam Newton's shoulder is messed up. But let's face it, when you start out 6-2 and now you're 6-6, and I tell you what, this Pittsburgh Steelers, that debacle of a game on Thursday night, when they just ran up in the Carolina Panthers like that homosexual ran up in Dwight Howard allegedly did. I mean, that exposed that team up to no end. The Carolina Panthers defense has been below mediocre standards, and that's with a healthy Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis. They do not pressure the quarterback as they once did. Their secondary doesn't cover as well as they once did. Their tackling has fell off. Now, they do not, outside of Mr. McCaffrey, they have not really surrounded Cam Newton with a whole lot of weapons. Now, he has a mediocre receiving core. Devin Funchess, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. But as we know, it all boils down a lot of times to Cam Newton, McCaffrey, and Greg Olsen. Every time Greg Olsen's hurt, this team can't move the football. And what happened? Greg Olsen's hurt. They do not have a viable tight end option to take the place of Greg Olsen, who is one of Cam Newton's closest friends on the team, and they definitely have a chemistry together. So there you have it with that. And as you can tell, Ron Rivera, or Riverboat Ron, as they like to call him, he has gambled a lot and lost, and he is losing big time. And that was a terrible loss last week against a terrible Tampa Bay team. And that's why I have to put Ron Rivera on this list of quarterbacks that could walk the plank. Now, the next quarterback I have on this list, I know it's going to turn a little bit of heads because they are obviously a half a game out of first place in the AFC North, but I have to put John Harbaugh here. John Harbaugh, they started out mediocre when Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback. The best thing that ever happened to the Baltimore Ravens was Joe Flacco hurting his hip. Because even though Lamar Jackson doesn't have the prerequisite numbers that you really need at the quarterback position as far as the throwing of the football, he has been able to move the ball enough with his arm and with his legs to where Baltimore has been undefeated ever since he's been the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, has he been the prototypical quarterback? Absolutely not. Have they found new and inventive ways to move the offense? Yes, they have. And I know that they've done a lot without their leading runner, Alex Collins, who was placed on IR last week. Now, their receiving core is actually pretty decent when you have the likes of John Brown and Jeremy Maclin. That's not a bad 1-2 punch right there. And their tight ends, Max Williams, and I cannot think of the other young man at tight end, but they've done a pretty good job also. And, of course, they have a very good offensive line, and they have one of the top 4 defenses in all the NFL. I mean, Terrell Suggs has been outstanding, and you know as a Steeler fan, it pains me to say it, but the Baltimore Ravens play defense the way the Steelers once did. And it's really disheartening to see this Raven team go after the rest of their teams the way that they do, and the Steelers don't do. I mean, they've done it in spurts. But last week, I'm not even going to put on the defense. Last week, I'm going to put half of it is on the referees, the other half on the special teams, and the other half is on Big Ben Roethlisberger. And that's going to lead me up to another guy that could walk the plank. Now, depending on what the Pittsburgh Steelers do, and I don't take any joy in putting him on this list, but I have to be balanced and fair. If the Pittsburgh Steelers do not win this division, you do not be shocked if the Pittsburgh Steelers find a way to get rid of Mike Tomlin. There have been plenty of fans and plenty of media and plenty of other guys that have been clamoring for Mike Tomlin to be fired from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this has been going on for a long time. I mean, we've heard it from Terry Bradshaw. We've heard it from others within the media. We've heard it from plenty of fans, so-called fans. As far as I'm concerned, you're not a true Pittsburgh Steelers fan if you want Mike Tomlin to walk the plank and not talk about the GM who brought over some of these dopey players, especially when you look at a lot of the Pittsburgh Steelers first-round picks. Artie Burns has been an absolute bust. But Dupree has played a lot better, but he's not exactly what I call a stud. The last really good number 1 pick that the Pittsburgh Steelers made is hurt, and that's Ryan Shazier. Now, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned, Mike Tomlin should be getting Coach of the Year honors, at least some Coach of the Year voting. Remember, he lost his most important offensive player in Le'Veon Bell, had to replace him with James Conner, who's going to be hurt for at least a couple of weeks. He's definitely out this week against the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Steelers do not play the Oakland Raiders well. And I understand that this is a Raider franchise that has been terrible. But if the Steelers ever lost this Sunday to Oakland and ever lose that division, don't be shocked if Mike Tomlin's name starts getting bandied about. Now, if Mike Tomlin were to ever be parting ways with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he would probably last, his lack of a job would last about 2 minutes. The minute he got fired and the minute he picked up the phone. Because there would be about 20 other teams that would love to have Mike Tomlin. But I would not be shocked if Mike Tomlin were put on this list of being fired if the Pittsburgh Steelers somehow lose a grip on the AFC North. Now, another coach that I have on this list, and I understand that they are in first place in their respective division, but the Dallas Cowboy coach, Jason Garrett, he has to be on this list. Especially, God forbid, if they turn around and lose the division to either the Washington Redskins or the Philadelphia Eagles, I could see Jason Garrett walking the plank. Especially if they lost this Sunday to Philadelphia at home. There are going to be rumblings again about Jason Garrett. And rightfully so. Because let's face it, this division is ripe for the Dallas Cowboys picking. The Philadelphia Eagles have not played well this season. They have been mediocre. The Washington Redskins have lost 2 quarterbacks. They've lost Alex Smith. They've lost Colt McCoy. And now, as stupid as it sounds, they're going to turn to Mark Sanchez when Colin Kaepernick should have easily been on this team. In fact, I could make a case for Colin Kaepernick to be on 20 other teams very easy. But I digress. The team with the most glaring need is the Washington Redskins, and the fact that they did not pick up Colin Kaepernick and they'd rather sign a guy like Mark Sanchez and have him backed up by a John Johnson, that lets you know how bigoted and how phony the NFL is. But I digress. We're talking about the Dallas Cowboys and Jason Garrett. Now, why should Garrett walk the plank? I mean, now there is no excuse for Dak Prescott. He definitely has a number one option as far as throwing the football. Amari Cooper has been outstanding ever since he's been there. He's got the best running back in football, Zeke Elliott. I mean, I think it's Todd Gurley myself, but as far as just hand the ball off to him and let him run, it is Ezekiel Elliott. There's no question about it. The Dallas defense is supposed to be top-notch. That Dallas defense has been at top. They are like the little girls with the curls. When they're good, they're very good, but when they're bad, they are awful. And I'm telling you, the Dallas Cowboys coach, Jason Garrett, definitely deserves to be on this list of coaches that can walk the plank. Now, the final coach that I have, as far as coaches walking the plank, is the aforementioned Washington Redskins coach, Jay Gruden. Now, why isn't John Gruden on the list when he's been by far the most overrated and the most outcoached coach in the entire NFL? Well, it's very simple. When you're given a 10-year, $100 million contract the way John Gruden is, you're going to get at least 2 to 3 years. Let's face it. When you're getting paid more than the GM, you have the leeway to fuck up the way he's done it. And as far as I'm concerned, he shouldn't, but he does. Now, Jay Gruden, on the other hand, they have not done well since Kirk Cousins is gone. I mean, Alex Smith was suffering with the team before he got hurt. Colt McCoy was actually moving the team better, and now he's hurt. And now they turn to Mark Sanchez. But even before that, Jay Gruden had not wowed anybody. The Washington Redskins defense has actually done pretty well, considering. Now, Josh Norman has been one of the biggest busts of all time when it comes to the free agent market. But this is nothing new for the Redskins. Remember, there's the same Washington Redskins franchise that gave you Albert Hainsworth, who was about the biggest free agent bust I've ever seen. But their defense has done pretty well. Ryan Kerrigan, the other Perry Riley Jr. Now, the offense, let's face it, losing the running back that they did the way they did, that was terrible because they put a lot on Darius Geis's shoulders. They thought that Darius Geis was going to run for at least 1,200 yards. They figured him and Samaje Perine were going to do well. And, of course, Thompson being the third down back, they thought that they would do well, but they haven't. The Redskin receivers have been mediocre. I mean, Paul Richardson. I mean, their best receiver is still the tight end, Reed. And it's been the two tight ends. It's been Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed. Those have been their best weapons. And it's not even been close. And let's face it, Jay Gruden's offense has never truly been explosive, especially in the red zone. They've always had a lot of problems. And that falls on Jay Gruden and his unimaginative play calling. I mean, the only reason I feel that he still has a job is because of his brother. And those are the guys that I have on the list as far as mediocre to pretty good to very good coaches that could walk the plank at the end of the 2018-2019 NFL season. Now, I understand that a couple of those choices are going to raise some eyebrows. I mean, let's face it. Mike Tomlin in a perfect world, Mike Tomlin shouldn't even be on the list. But I have to be objective and fair. The Pittsburgh Steelers started out very poorly. Then they ran off about 5 straight victories. And now, as you see, the Steelers they've lost 2 in a row, and they've lost 2 bad games against Denver and the Los Angeles Chargers at home. If they ever lost this game this Sunday in Oakland, there will be a march for Mike Tomlin to be run out as quick as shit. And trust me, there will be a huge amount of the so-called Steeler fan base that would drum up Tomlin has to go. And you know Terry Bradshaw would be among the guys in the media leading the charge for Mike Tomlin to be fired. John Harbaugh was on the chopping block until Lamar Jackson became the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. As far as I'm concerned, when Ozzie Newsome goes, John Harbaugh can still go. It's not a given that John Harbaugh is going to come back next year. I mean, the new GM of the Ravens might want to put his own stamp on the franchise and bring in a different head coach. Would it be Jim Harbaugh? I don't know about that. I don't think he would do that out of respect to his brother. But I could see the Baltimore Ravens going another direction. Couldn't you? Now, again, I am not counting the teams that already have an interim head coach. Now, the teams that already have an interim head coach are this Cleveland Browns situation with Greg Williams and, of course, Joe Philbin in Green Bay. Now, did Aaron Rodgers quit on Mark McCarthy? Absolutely he did. Now, if you don't think the New York Football Jets are going to look at Mark McCarthy, a Super Bowl champion head coach, then you guys are nuts. Because trust me, Todd Bowles is gone. I mean, it is just about written in stone, but there's no way that Todd Bowles is coming back as head coach of the New York Jets. And those are the guys that I have. And I'll go over it once again. Number one on the list, I have the Tampa Bay head coach, Dirk Cutter. Number two, I have Cincinnati Bengals head coach, Marvin Lewis. Number three, I have I have New York Jets coach, Todd Bowles. Number four, I have Ron Rivera of Carolina Panthers. Number five, I have the Baltimore Ravens head coach, John Harbaugh. Number six, and I have an asterisk next to his name, I have Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. Number seven, I have Dallas Cowboy head coach Jason Garrett. And at number 8, I have the Washington Redskins head coach, Mr. Jay Gruden. And those are the guys that I have that are on the proverbial hot seat in the NFL. Now I'm going to finish up this live stream with an update on the guy I like to call Cinnabons, Dwight Howard. Now, Dwight Howard had surgery last Thursday to correct his buttocks injury, and he will be out anywhere from 2 to 3 months, which means that the earliest that he would come back would be probably about early to mid-March of this season. Now, that would give him enough time if the Washington Wizards were still in the playoff chase. That would give him enough time to get into a good playing and game shape in order for the Washington Wizards to make a playoff run. But that could all be blown by the wayside because, let's face it, the Washington Wizards have underachieved this season. And there has been plenty of trade talk surrounding both John Wall and Bradley Beal, the best 2 players on the team. Now, from what I hear, the entire team is up to be traded. And that includes, obviously, Otto Porter, Markieff Morris, and other guys like that. But, of course, the guys that are going to draw the most attention are Bradley Beal and John Wall. And from what I've been hearing, Bradley Beal has garnered much more attention than John Wall, which lets you know how far John Wall has fell off as far as the hierarchy of NBA point guards. So that is the update as far as Cinnabons Howard. He will be out until early to mid-March. And I don't think he'll play another game this season as a member of the Washington Wizards. Okay, and that's going to end my live stream. I'm going to have one more toast to the deceased President George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. May he forever rest in hell. And you can just collect all the worms you want along with your sorry-ass, Quaker Oats-looking-ass wife, Barbara Bush. Refreshing, ladies and gentlemen. Please like and subscribe. My name is Claude White. Please take care and God bless.